we engaged in the summer, and I didn't move forward on that. So point number one, and looking back now, I'm extremely pissed off that I didn't, because I'd be 4 months, 5 months further along than what I am today.
So today we've got Richard Evans joining us for his success interview. Richard's recently finished up with us in the 1% Blueprint program, and he's actually re-engaged to do some more coaching with me and him one-to-one. But he's jumping on kindly to take 20, 30 minutes of his time. He's a very busy man to talk through his experiences of working with us today, what he's learned, his success he's had, and hopefully for a lot of us and anyone that's watching, it'll be quite insightful. Like I said in the preamble to this video, I think personal responsibility, taking ownership, having routine and structure is a big thing. And I know it's been for Richard, and I think for anyone that's struggling with that stuff watching this, I think it'll be really helpful. So it should be a really good chat. That being said, Richard, would you want to just introduce yourself, who you are, what you do, just a bit of background about you?
Sure, of course. Well, good afternoon, everyone. As Luke says, my name's Richard. I'm based here in the Midlands. I'm a relatively boring guy, 44 years old, sort of family, work, love my sport. So yeah, I guess like a lot of people that are engaged with Luke, I sort of fit that sort of stereotypical middle-aged guy that sort of reached out, wanting to do a little bit more.
You kind of like reached out, like, and sort of got in touch about, you know, me helping out. Like, what was going on with you when you reached out, and then what was the catalyst for sort of talking to me about making some changes?
Sure, I guess I come from quite a I come from a very sporty background, and from somebody who had you know, the first 30 years of his life pretty much dominated by sport. I was always very healthy, athletic, fit, all the nice things that go with it. And then, of course, you get into sort of a different decade, a different stage of your life, and things change. Work took a bit more precedence, family took a bit more precedent, and I guess the good habits that my sport yielded stopped, yet the bad habits that they yielded, i.e. the socialization and the food and the drink, did not stop. If anything, they increased.
What would you say, given where you were at when we first spoke, what was your biggest frustration with the situation? What was like sort of pissing you off the most?
I think for me it was literally the inability to, despite being on the surface of it, or maybe in my mind, despite being relatively fit, the inability to maybe start shedding kilograms and pounds off the scales. I think if we break it down to blunt numbers, as I think I've mentioned to you before, I feel like I'm a relatively intelligent guy, or relatively. I feel like I know what I should be doing. I know the constituent parts, so why isn't it happening?
What are, I guess, your key achievements from having gone through the process, and then we can dig into like what we've done to achieve that.
Sure. Well, I think, as I mentioned to you, the catalyst was obviously to move the needle on a set of scales, if you want the truth. But I think going forward downstream, that has been a tick in the box, so no problem. I think from the day one that I started, I think I'm about 7 kilos different, 6-7 kilos different, which is a lovely number as a starter. But I think, if I'm honest, what's actually happened, and maybe this is predictable for yourself and for others, is that some of the other changes have maybe been a little bit more noticeable. You know, things like your clothes fitting a little bit easier. The actual performance, you know, you go for a run, you do X, Y, and Z, and you're significantly in better shape than you were. And if I'm honest, maybe my initial objective has paled into insignificance compared with those ones now. They've maybe overtaken in terms of importance. But also understanding and listening to you about this not being a linear process was also a massive, and still is a huge learning curve.
What have been the driving factors behind that?
I think consistency
from the process that we went through, I guess.
Yeah, sure. I think the biggest one is consistency. I think consistency is an absolute critical element of this, and especially given where I came from, where perhaps I was being extremely inconsistent. We planned it out. The planning led to me being disciplined. The discipline meant that it was my responsibility to go and do it. And I remember talking to you, and we said, even planned out that on this particular Saturday, I'm going to have a blowout. So we'd actually said, okay, well, on the Sunday, how are we going to deal with this retrospectively? And okay, was it pleasant? It was maybe not that nice, but it wasn't anywhere as bad as you anticipate it's going to be. The other thing that I've learned is that, like with any plan, it's fucking going to go wrong at some point. So therefore, you need to just adapt it subtly or majorly and start again. It doesn't matter.
Like, was there anything that surprised you? Like, bloody hell, I wasn't expecting that.
I think straight away, some of the things, again, without going into detail, some of the things that are not directly associated with either getting a sweat on or what calories you put in your body. I think they're maybe the things that I wasn't expecting, if I'm honest. Things associated with your mindset and that area. I genuinely wasn't expecting that when I walked into this. I think what it does do is it does provide you with some mental clarity and with some focus, and maybe brings you a little bit of, without sounding too hippie-y, but a little bit of inner peace and inner calm to be able to focus your attentions on where it needs to be at that particular time. It was an equally big element as the other components, and still continues to be so.
What if someone was sitting watching this and they're either in your shoes and they're a bit like, I'm feeling okay, but I'm just a bit stuck, or they're not in a great place, but they're a bit reticent about working with someone. Maybe they never worked with a coach, because, like you said, I think this was the first time you worked with in this regard. What would you say to something like that? It's a bit unsure.
Yeah. Okay, my answer is probably a bit long-winded, so forgive me, because a few components to it. But for me, I was always reticent about working with a coach, which, if I'm honest, I don't understand where my reticence came from, because there's not one element in my life where I haven't worked with a coach and it hasn't worked. You know what I mean? So, I played rugby all my life, and I had a coach. So why did I think that later in life you shouldn't have a coach? So I guess that's point number one. That took me a little bit of a mental hurdle to get over. We engaged in the summer, and I didn't move forward on that. So point number one, and looking back now, I'm extremely pissed off that I didn't, because I'd be 4 months, 5 months further along than what I am today.
Richard, thank you very much for your time. If anyone's watching and they're interested in having a chat with me, would like a conversation about how I work and what it all looks like, you can ping me a direct message or drop a note in the comments. On that note, have a great Thursday, and see you on the other side. Thank you.